Something massive is about to happen. The world as we know it is changing fast. Financial systems are shifting, governments are consolidating power, and deception is spreading like never before. But what if I told you that none of this is random? That over 2,500 years ago, a prophet saw this exact moment in time. And what's coming next? The book of Daniel isn't just an ancient story, it's a prophetic blueprint. A roadmap that reveals the rise and fall of world powers, the final deception, and the test that will determine your eternity. But here's the shocking part. Most people have no idea what's inside. The warnings are there. The timeline is there. The final decision is coming. And here's the chilling question. Are you ready? Because what Daniel saw is happening right now. And by the time most people realize it, it'll be too late. The mystery of Daniel, the most relevant prophetic book for today. The book of Daniel is more than just history. It's a prophecy sealed for the final days. Imagine a scroll locked away for centuries, waiting for the right moment to be unsealed. That moment, my friend, might be now. While most see Daniel as a story of survival in Babylon, few realize it contains a divine warning, a roadmap for the events unfolding before our eyes. How many people are actually paying attention? Jesus himself referenced Daniel's prophecies, urging us to understand them. Matthew 24:15. Yet so many remain unaware of the secrets hidden within these pages. Picture Daniel, a teenager taken from his home, ripped from his family, and thrown into the heart of a pagan empire. He could have compromised, he could have blended in, but instead, he remained unshakable. His unwavering faith wasn't just personal, it was prophetic. Every trial, every vision, every moment in his life pointed to something far bigger than his own story. And if you think this is just about history, think again. His life mirrors what believers will soon face. One of the most shocking things about Daniel's book is that God told him to seal certain prophecies until the end of time. That means some revelations were never meant for past generations. They were meant for us. But here's the thing, if people don't pay attention, they will be caught off guard. Is that happening right now? Are we asleep to the warnings that were given thousands of years ago? If knowledge is power, then ignorance is a trap. Let's talk about wealth and control. Daniel didn't just survive in Babylon, he thrived. He was promoted to one of the highest positions in the empire. Why? Because God gave him divine wisdom, insight, and strategy. His success wasn't random. It was the result of faithfulness and revelation. And here's where it gets interesting. The same principles Daniel lived by can impact your career, investments, and financial future. When God's people operate in divine wisdom, they rise above crises. That's why biblical entrepreneurship and financial stewardship are so important. Because in times of chaos, those who walk in God's wisdom are positioned for influence. But let's pause for a moment. This isn't just about finances or success. It's about spiritual survival. There is an enemy who doesn't want you to see what's happening. He thrives on deception, confusion, and distraction. He wants you to focus on temporary struggles while ignoring eternal realities. Daniel was thrown into a system that tried to strip him of his identity, change his name, erase his faith. Sound familiar? The world is constantly pushing believers to compromise, to bow to modern ideologies that contradict God's truth. And this is where we reach a critical moment. Daniel didn't just survive, he stood firm. His prayer life, his fasting, his spiritual discipline, they weren't random habits. They were his lifeline, and they will be yours too. What if I told you that your ability to thrive in the coming days depends on what you build in secret? Your prayers, your connection with God, your ability to discern truth in a world full of lies, these things will determine your future. So let me ask you, do you believe we are living in the time Daniel prophesied about? Are we seeing the final pages of this story unfold before our eyes? If you feel that urgency, drop a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. And as we move forward, let's dive deeper into the visions Daniel received about the future, because what's coming next will change everything. The prophecies of Daniel, a window into the future. Imagine standing on the edge of time, looking ahead at events that will shape the world. That's exactly what Daniel experienced. He wasn't just a dream interpreter. He was given visions that stretched across centuries, predicting the rise and fall of empires, the coming of the Messiah, and events still unfolding today. Some of his prophecies have already been fulfilled with terrifying accuracy, while others, the ones concerning the final days, are happening now. The question is, are you paying attention? One of the most jaw-dropping revelations in Daniel's book is the precise timeline he gives for history's biggest moments. Think about it. This was written 2,500 years ago, and yet Daniel saw the rise of Persia, Greece, and Rome. He even pinpointed the exact time when Jesus Christ would appear. And if all those details came true, then what about the prophecies that haven't yet been fulfilled? That should make you pause. Because if Daniel was right about the past, he's right about the future. But let's bring this closer to home. How does this impact you today? It's simple. Prophecy is preparation. If you knew a storm was coming, you wouldn't just sit back and ignore it. You'd prepare, wouldn't you? You'd make sure your home was secure, your family was safe, and your resources were in order. That's exactly what God is calling us to do spiritually. Daniel's prophecies are a wake-up call, not just about world events, but about how we should be living right now. Here's something that might surprise you. God never reveals the future without giving instructions on how to navigate it. Daniel didn't just see visions, he received divine wisdom on how to live in dark times. He fasted, he prayed, and he surrounded himself with people who strengthened his faith. How strong is your faith right now? How prepared are you to stand firm when the world starts shaking? Because let me tell you, shaking is coming, and only those rooted in truth will remain standing. Let's talk about something people don't often connect to Daniel's prophecies: money and influence. Have you noticed how financial systems are shifting? Currencies are being destabilized, economic power is being transferred, and entire industries are changing overnight. None of this is random. Daniel's prophecies pointed to massive changes in world power, and right now, we are watching the setup for the final act. This is why biblical principles on investments, entrepreneurship, and financial wisdom are more critical than ever. The world system is fragile, but God's economy is unshakable. And this brings us to a spiritual crossroads. Daniel's prophecies weren't just about politics and world leaders. They were about the battle between truth and deception. As we approach the final events of history, people will be forced to make a choice: follow God's ways or conform to a system that stands against him. There will be pressure, there will be manipulation, and just like in Daniel's time, there will be those who bow and those who stand. Which side will you be on? So here's my challenge to you. Start paying attention. Study these prophecies, strengthen your faith, and prepare spiritually, financially, and mentally for what's ahead. If this is resonating with you, let me know in the comments. And now let's go even deeper, because what Daniel saw next is even more shocking. Nebuchadnezzar's dream and the prophetic statue. Picture this: a powerful king, ruler of the greatest empire on earth, wakes up in a cold sweat. He's just had a dream so vivid, so terrifying, that it shakes him to his core. He knows it's more than just a dream. It's a message. But there's a problem. He doesn't understand it. And worse, he can't even remember it. King Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of Babylon, demanded that his wise men tell him not only the interpretation but the dream itself. Impossible, right? That's what his advisors thought. But then came Daniel, a man who walked in divine wisdom. Through prayer and fasting, God revealed the dream to him, and what Daniel described next was nothing short of prophetic genius. Nebuchadnezzar had seen a massive statue, a towering figure made of different metals: gold, silver, bronze, iron, and iron mixed with clay. And then, out of nowhere, a rock, not cut by human hands, came crashing down, striking the statue's feet and obliterating it completely. That rock grew into a mountain that filled the entire earth. Sounds intense, right? But here's where it gets even more interesting. This wasn't just a dream. It was a divine timeline. Each metal represented a world empire. Gold, Babylon, the empire Nebuchadnezzar ruled. Silver, the Medo-Persian empire that would conquer Babylon. Bronze, Greece, led by Alexander the Great. Iron, Rome, a brutal and dominating empire. Iron mixed with clay, a final divided kingdom, unstable, weak, yet still holding power. Now here's where things get chilling. We are living in the era of iron mixed with clay, the final stage. The time just before the rock, God's kingdom, comes to shatter the world system forever. If this prophecy has been 100% accurate for the past 2,500 years, what makes you think the final part won't happen exactly as predicted? And let's be real. We can see it happening. Nations are divided, governments are unstable, alliances are fragile. People are desperately looking for security, financially, politically, even spiritually. But here's what most don't realize. The world system was never meant to last. We're watching the last moments of a crumbling kingdom. Let's talk about what this means for you. If everything around you is temporary, where are you putting your trust? Are you investing your time, energy, and resources into things that will pass away? Or are you building something that lasts? The Bible makes it clear. God's kingdom is the only thing that remains. That means our faith, our obedience, our connection with Him is what truly matters. But here's a crucial question. How do you stand firm in a collapsing world? The same way Daniel did, through prayer, fasting, and unwavering faith. He didn't bow to Babylon's system, and because of that, he walked in supernatural wisdom and favor. That same wisdom is available to you. Are you seeking it? And let me challenge you with this. If you knew the world system was about to crumble, wouldn't you start preparing now? Wouldn't you think differently about your career, your finances, your daily life? This is why biblical wisdom in business, investments, and entrepreneurship matters. Because when everything shifts, those who operate under God's wisdom will be positioned to lead. So let me ask you, do you see the signs? Do you recognize that we are standing at the edge of this prophecy's fulfillment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because next we're diving into something even more intense. A mysterious power rising in the final days, one that Daniel warned would deceive the world, the little horn and the hidden power of the last days. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you believed to be true had been manipulated, that the world's systems, governments, religions, economies, had all been subtly reshaped to serve a hidden agenda. This isn't the plot of a thriller. It's a reality Daniel saw thousands of years ago in a vision so intense that it left him physically sick. Daniel 8:27. And what he saw is unfolding right now. In his vision, Daniel saw a terrifying beast with 10 horns, representing powerful nations. But then, something strange happened. A small horn began to grow. It started insignificant, almost unnoticeable, but then it took over. It uprooted 3 other horns, gained unmatched authority, and began to speak against God himself. This little horn wasn't just another kingdom, it was a deceptive power, a system that would manipulate, control, and even persecute those who remained faithful to God. Now let's break this down. Who or what is this little horn? Scholars and theologians have debated this for centuries, but here's what we know. It rises from among established nations, Daniel 7:8. It starts small but becomes powerful, Daniel 7:20. It changes times and laws, Daniel 7:25. It persecutes God's people, Daniel 7:21. It speaks blasphemies, placing itself in God's position, Daniel 7:25. This isn't just history. This is a warning. Daniel saw a force that would redefine morality, distort truth, and push people away from God. Sound familiar? Look at the world today. Truth is being rewritten. Right and wrong are being blurred. Faith is under attack. We are living in the time when this power is rising. But here's where it gets personal. Are you being influenced by it without realizing it? Because this power doesn't operate through brute force, it operates through deception. It creeps into culture, into education, into entertainment, into politics. It makes compromise seem harmless. It makes truth seem offensive. It convinces people that standing for God is extreme, outdated, even dangerous. This isn't a future threat. It's happening now. And let's talk about something people rarely connect to this prophecy. Money. Do you think financial systems are neutral? Do you think global shifts in wealth and power are random? Not a chance. The same spirit that seeks to control faith also seeks to control resources, careers, and economies. Why? Because when people are financially dependent on a corrupt system, they're easier to manipulate. Daniel's vision makes it clear. The final battle won't just be about religion, it will be about control. And the more dependent you are on this system, the more vulnerable you'll be when it demands your allegiance. So what's the solution? How do you stand against a power designed to deceive? The answer is the same as it was in Daniel's day: wisdom, prayer, fasting, and divine strategy. This is why understanding biblical entrepreneurship, passive income, and God-led financial decisions is more important than ever. Your ability to stand firm depends on your ability to live outside this system. And let me leave you with this. Do you think the world is heading toward greater freedom or greater control? Are you seeing these signs play out in real time? If this is resonating with you, drop a comment below. Because what Daniel saw next is even more shocking, a countdown to the final judgment. And trust me, you need to hear what's coming. The vision of the 2300 days, the countdown to final judgment. Imagine a clock, not just any clock, but one set by God Himself. A divine countdown, marking the moment when everything changes. That's exactly what Daniel saw in one of his most mysterious and mind-blowing visions. In Daniel 8:14, an angel reveals that unto 2300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. What does that even mean? And why should you care? Because this prophecy isn't about ancient history. It's about right now. To understand this, you need to see the bigger picture. Daniel wasn't just given random numbers. He was shown a timeline that stretches from his day to the very end of time. In prophetic terms, 1 day equals 1 year. Numbers 14:34, Ezekiel 4:6. That means this prophecy is talking about 2,300 years of history, leading to one final crucial event. And guess what? That timeline is almost over. So what is the cleansing of the sanctuary? In biblical terms, this refers to judgment. It's the moment when God steps in and sets things right. In Daniel's time, this meant the purification of the earthly temple. But on a bigger scale, it's about the final judgment before the second coming of Christ. We are literally living in the final phase of history, where decisions are being made that will determine eternity. But let's be real, most people don't think about judgment. They're too busy chasing success, money, comfort, and entertainment. And listen, I'm not saying those things don't matter, but here's the problem. What good is building wealth if you're blind to the times we're living in? What good is achieving career success if you ignore the bigger picture? Daniel's prophecy wasn't just about judgment, it was about preparation. And here's where things get even more intense. While God is calling His people to prepare, the world is getting more distracted. Instead of seeking wisdom, people are drowning in debt, social media addiction, anxiety, and a desperate chase for temporary success. But what if I told you that understanding God's timing could give you an advantage? Not just spiritually, but in every area of life. Think about it. Daniel didn't just receive visions, he received strategy. He was placed in one of the most powerful empires, yet he never lost his faith. He understood timing. He knew when to speak, when to act, and when to wait. Do you? Because let me tell you, if you don't understand the times, you will be caught off guard. And let's talk about one of the biggest areas where people are being set up to fail: finances. The world's economy is shifting fast. Inflation, digital currencies, global instability, it's all happening right before our eyes. Do you think it's random? Daniel's vision points to a world where power will be consolidated, where control will tighten, and where those who aren't prepared will be forced to submit. This is why biblical wisdom in investments, entrepreneurship, and passive income is critical, because the less dependent you are on the world's system, the more freedom you have when everything changes. So here's the question: are you living like time is running out, or are you living like you have forever? Daniel's vision wasn't just for scholars or theologians. It was for people like you and me, people who need to wake up, get serious, and start aligning their lives with what really matters. If this is hitting home for you, drop a comment below, because next we're uncovering something even more mysterious, a prophecy that was sealed for thousands of years, until now. The sealed book and the revelation reserved for the last days. Imagine being given a message so powerful, so life-changing, that you're told, seal it up. The world isn't ready yet. That's exactly what happened to Daniel. In Daniel 12:4, after receiving visions of the final events of history, God tells him, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Now, let that sink in for a moment. This means that certain truths were hidden, locked away, until now. So what was Daniel shown that had to be kept secret for thousands of years? And more importantly, why is it being revealed now? That's the part that should send chills down your spine. Because if we're finally starting to understand these prophecies, then we must be in the time they were meant for, the final generation, the ones who would see everything unfold. One of the key signs that Daniel's sealed book is being opened is found in the same verse. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. We are living in an age of exploding information. Technology, artificial intelligence, instant global communication, things that past generations could never have imagined. But this isn't just about scientific progress, it's about spiritual understanding. For centuries, people read Daniel's book and scratch their heads. Now prophecy is making sense like never before. And here's where things get personal. If prophecy is being unlocked, that means deception is also increasing. The enemy knows his time is short. That's why we're seeing a flood of false narratives, manipulated media, financial instability, and a growing hostility toward faith. It's not random. It's part of the setup. A world so distracted, so spiritually blind, that when the final test comes, most people won't even realize they're failing it. Now let's talk about why this matters for your daily life. If God is revealing mysteries meant for this generation, it means we have a responsibility. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you ignore it and stay caught up in the system? Or will you prepare spiritually, mentally, financially? Because let me tell you, Daniel didn't just receive revelation, he lived differently because of it. Think about it. Daniel's preparation positioned him for influence. When the time came, he wasn't just a bystander, he was a leader, a man of wisdom, a financial and political strategist placed in the heart of an empire. Why? Because he aligned himself with God's plan. The question is, are you? And here's something no one talks about. The opening of Daniel's book is directly connected to financial shifts. As prophecies unfold, the world's economic systems are being restructured. Wealth is being transferred. Power is shifting. Those who understand God's timing will be positioned for impact, while those who ignore it will be caught off guard. This is why biblical wisdom in entrepreneurship, investments, and passive income is more critical than ever. So here's my challenge to you. If knowledge is increasing, are you increasing with it? Are you seeking truth? Are you preparing? Or are you letting the distractions of this world keep you from what really matters? Because let me tell you, What's coming next is even more dangerous. A global deception so powerful, so convincing, that even believers will be at risk of falling for it. And that's exactly what we're diving into next. The role of global deception in the last days. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everything you thought was real was a carefully crafted illusion. The news, the economy, even the way people think, all manipulated to shape your beliefs and control your choices. Now, here's the scary part. Daniel saw it coming. His visions didn't just reveal political shifts and global empires. They exposed a massive end-time deception, one so powerful that it would mislead even the most faithful if possible. Matthew 24:24. But here's the question. How do you deceive an entire world? You don't do it overnight. You condition people, you distract them. You rewrite history, twist morality, and flood society with half-truths until people can't tell the difference between truth and lies. Look around. Isn't that exactly what's happening? One of the most dangerous things about deception is that the deceived don't know they're deceived. That's why Daniel's warnings are so crucial. He saw a time when world leaders, religious systems, and financial powers would unite under a false narrative. A time when the truth would be so distorted that those who stood for God would be labeled as the problem. That time isn't coming, it's here. And let's talk about the money connection. Do you think global financial shifts are just about inflation, interest rates, and market cycles? Not even close. The control of wealth is one of the biggest tools in this deception. Why? Because when people are financially desperate, they'll accept almost any solution, even one that strips them of their freedom. Daniel's prophecy reveals that the final deception will come with a system of control so tight that those who don't comply won't be able to buy or sell. Daniel 7:25, Revelation 13:17. Sound familiar? But here's where it gets serious. The deception won't look evil. It will look good. It will appear as the solution to the world's problems. A false unity, a false peace, a false prosperity. It will promise safety, inclusivity, and fairness, but underneath it, control. This is why we must be spiritually sharp, financially independent, and deeply rooted in God's truth. If you are dependent on the system, you are vulnerable to its demands. But if you are aligned with God's wisdom, you will have supernatural provision even in times of crisis. So here's my challenge to you. How do you know you're not already deceived? Have you tested what you believe? Have you questioned the narratives being fed to you? Are you seeking truth or just consuming whatever is given to you? Because the final deception won't be obvious. It will feel natural, logical, even righteous. But when the time comes, the choice will be clear. Stand with God or conform to the system. So let me ask you, do you see the deception unfolding? Are you noticing the shifts happening around you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because next we're diving into something even more intense, a story from Daniel's life that foreshadows what's coming for believers in the final days. And trust me, you need to hear this. The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and the image of the beast. Imagine standing in the middle of a massive crowd. The air is thick with tension. A giant golden statue looms before you, towering over the people. Then comes the command, when the music plays, bow down or die. This isn't a game, this is life or death. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 young men, captives in Babylon, believers in the one true God, stood before this impossible choice. Blend in or take a stand. The entire empire bowed to the statue. But these 3, they didn't move. They knew the cost. They knew they could be thrown into a furnace and burned alive. But they also knew something else. God was greater than the king's decree. Now here's where this gets terrifying. This isn't just an ancient story, it's a prophecy. In the book of Revelation, we see something eerily similar. An image will be set up, and the world will be forced to worship it or face the consequences. Revelation 13:15. Just like in Daniel's time, the choice will be clear: bow or burn. And the real question is, when that moment comes, will you stand? Think about it. The pressure to conform is already here. It's not a giant statue, but it's everywhere, in culture, in politics, in financial systems. Society is training people to comply, to stay silent, to avoid offending, to bow down to the new definitions of truth. What happens when standing for God means losing your job, losing friends, losing financial security? Would you still stand? And let's talk about the economic side of this. When Nebuchadnezzar commanded people to bow, it wasn't just about worship. It was about control. Those who didn't comply were considered rebels, outcasts. And that's exactly what's happening today. Governments and corporations are already experimenting with financial tracking, digital currencies, and social credit systems. What happens when refusing to comply means you lose access to your bank account? Daniel's prophecy wasn't just spiritual, it was financial. Those who refuse to bow in the last days will be economically isolated. But here's the plot twist. Even when they were thrown into the fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego weren't alone. A fourth figure appeared in the flames, Jesus himself, Daniel 3:25. They were untouched by the fire, and that's the key. God doesn't always keep us from the fire, but he does walk with us through it. That's why those who are rooted in him, spiritually and financially, will be able to stand while the rest of the world bows. So let me ask you, are you preparing for that moment? Because this story isn't just history, it's your future. If you're seeing the signs of this prophecy playing out, drop a comment below, because next we're talking about Daniel himself, a man who faced the ultimate test of faith. And trust me, you need to hear what happened. Daniel, in the lion's den, the faith that will be tested again. Picture this: a royal decree is signed. No one is allowed to pray to any god except the king. For most people, it wasn't a big deal. Just go along with it, stay quiet, and avoid trouble. But for Daniel, that was never an option. He knew exactly what this meant. Praying to God now carried a death sentence. Yet what did he do? He went home, opened his windows, and prayed, just like he always had. He didn't hide. He didn't compromise. He stood firm, knowing it would cost him everything, and sure enough, his enemies saw him, reported him, and the punishment was set. Daniel would be thrown into the lion's den. Now, let's pause here. Do you realize this is going to happen again? The Bible tells us that in the last days there will be laws designed to test who you truly serve. Revelation 13:16-17. And just like in Daniel's time, people will face a choice: obey God or obey the system. When that moment comes, what will you choose? Daniel could have made excuses. He could have prayed in secret. He could have compromised just a little to save himself, but he didn't. He understood something most people miss. Obedience to God is more important than survival. And because he was faithful, God shut the mouths of the lions. Daniel walked out of that den without a scratch. Now, here's where it gets real. The modern lion's den isn't just a pit full of wild animals. It's the pressure to conform. It's the financial, political, and social structures that are designed to intimidate and control. And just like in Daniel's time, the system is setting a trap. It will look like a simple law, a harmless change in policy, a shift in economic regulations, until suddenly faith itself becomes a crime. And let's talk about the money connection. Do you think it was random that Daniel was one of the most powerful financial and political figures in Babylon? Not at all. He was given divine wisdom, not just to survive, but to thrive in the middle of a corrupt system. That's why understanding biblical principles of financial independence, investments, and wealth creation is critical. The more dependent you are on the system, the harder it will be to stand when the test comes. Here's the key: God didn't remove Daniel from Babylon. He positioned him in Babylon. That means you don't need to fear what's coming. You just need to be prepared. Your faith, your finances, your mindset, all of it matters. So let me ask you, if you were thrown into the lion's den tomorrow, would you trust God? Would you remain faithful even when everything is on the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Because next, we're talking about the one thing Daniel did every day that made him unshakable and how you can do the same. The key to staying strong in the last days. What made Daniel different? Why did he stand firm while others bowed? Why did he receive divine wisdom, prophetic insight, and supernatural protection? The answer isn't complicated, it's consistent. Daniel had a secret weapon, and it wasn't power, wealth, or influence. It was his daily devotion to God. Let's get real. Staying strong in a collapsing world doesn't happen by accident. You don't just wake up one day with unshakable faith. You build it. Every single day. Daniel didn't wait for the crisis to start praying. He didn't wait for the test to decide what he believed. His faith was built long before the lion's den, long before the fiery furnace, long before the king's decrees. And here's the key. Daniel prayed 3 times a day, no matter what. He didn't just pray when it was convenient. He didn't just pray in emergencies. He made time for God, and that's what made him unshakable. When the storm came, when the laws changed, when the pressure increased, Daniel didn't change because he was already anchored. Now here's where this connects to you. What are you anchored in? When the world shifts, when your finances are tested, when your career is shaken, what keeps you grounded? Because let me tell you, if your faith isn't built before the storm, you won't survive the storm. And let's talk about another huge factor people ignore. Daniel didn't walk alone. He had a circle. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were more than friends. They were his spiritual battle team. When things got tough, they encouraged each other, strengthened each other, stood together. If you think you can stay strong in the final days while being spiritually isolated, think again. Now let's get even deeper, because this isn't just about faith. Daniel's discipline impacted every part of his life. He didn't just pray, he fasted. He didn't just survive. He thrived in his career. He didn't just react to crises. He had divine wisdom to navigate them. And here's what no one talks about. His faith made him financially unshakable. The same wisdom that gave him prophetic insight also gave him the ability to handle wealth, manage resources, and walk in divine favor. That's why understanding biblical principles of financial independence, investments, and entrepreneurship isn't optional. It's part of preparing for the future. So here's my challenge to you. Are you building unshakable faith? Are you disciplined in your prayer life? Are you seeking wisdom not just for today, but for the days ahead? Because what's coming next isn't just a test, it's the final battle. And speaking of that, we're about to uncover one of the most mysterious figures in Daniel's book, the warrior who stands up in the last days, the role of Michael in the final battle. Imagine standing on the battlefield of the greatest war in history. But this isn't just a war between nations. This is a war for eternity. Forces of darkness are gathering. The deception is at its peak. The final crisis is unfolding. And just when it seems like evil is about to win, a warrior steps in. Daniel 12:1 describes this moment. At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince who stands for the children of your people. This isn't just any angel. This is God's top commander, the one who fights on behalf of his people. In other parts of Scripture, Michael is seen casting down Satan, Revelation 12:7-9, fighting for God's people, Jude 1:9, and intervening in major spiritual battles, Daniel 10:13. But in Daniel's final vision, Michael doesn't just fight, he stands. That means something huge is about to happen. Now let's pause here. Why does Michael need to step in? Because what's coming isn't just a physical crisis. It's a spiritual war at a level never seen before. Daniel 12:1 continues, There shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. This means chaos is coming. Governments will collapse, economies will break, society will be shaken, and only those who are truly grounded in God will endure. Let's be real, most people aren't ready for this. They're distracted, unprepared, and spiritually weak. They're chasing temporary success, but ignoring eternal preparation. And here's the truth. You can have money, success, and influence, but if you're spiritually unarmed, you won't survive the final battle. That's why understanding Daniel's message is so critical. And here's where things get even deeper. Every major shift in prophecy is tied to financial and political changes. The final events won't just be about spiritual battles, they will be tied to economic control, financial dependence, and global power structures. This is why wisdom in investments, passive income, and financial independence matters now more than ever. If you are financially dependent on the system, you will be vulnerable when it demands your loyalty. But here's the good news. God never leaves his people defenseless. When Michael stands up, it means that the time of deception is ending. It means that justice is coming. It means that deliverance is near. And Daniel 12:1 makes it clear, "At that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book." That's a promise. So here's the question. Are you ready for the battle ahead? Are you spiritually, mentally, and financially prepared to stand when the system demands that you bow? Because let me tell you, what's coming next will test everyone. If you're feeling the urgency of this, drop a comment below. Because now, we're diving into a prophecy that reveals exactly what the final generation will experience. And trust me, you need to hear this. The time of the end and the explosion of knowledge. Imagine living in a time where prophecy is unfolding in real time, where things that were once impossible are now happening before your eyes. Guess what? You are living in that time, and Daniel saw it coming. In Daniel 12:4, after receiving the final vision, he was told, "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." Now let's break this down, because this prophecy is happening right now. First, many shall run to and fro. Some interpret this as a prophecy about global travel. And let's be honest, we live in a world where people can cross continents in hours. But it also means something deeper, a desperate search for truth. In the last days, people will be seeking answers, trying to understand what's happening. But only those who turn to God's word will find the truth. Second, knowledge shall increase. Let's be real. We live in the most advanced era in human history. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, digital finance, instant communication, all things that were once science fiction are now reality. But this prophecy isn't just about technology. It's about spiritual knowledge, the mysteries that were sealed in Daniel's time. They are being revealed now. And that means one thing, we are in the final stretch. Now let's talk about something people overlook. Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. Just because information is everywhere doesn't mean people are getting smarter. In fact, the more knowledge increases, the more people are being deceived. Fake news, false ideologies, twisted morality, the world is drowning in information but starving for truth. And that's exactly what Daniel warned about. And here's the part most people don't see coming. With the rise of knowledge comes the rise of control. Think about it. The financial system is shifting toward digital currencies. Governments are increasing surveillance and regulation. Artificial intelligence is replacing decision-making. Do you think this is random? Not a chance. The same system that is increasing knowledge is also increasing its grip on people's lives. And Daniel's prophecy makes it clear. Those who don't understand the times will be caught in the trap. So, let me ask you, are you preparing for what's coming? Not just spiritually, but mentally and financially, because the world system is being redesigned for control. If you're not thinking ahead, if you're not building multiple streams of income, securing financial independence, and seeking God's wisdom, you will be vulnerable when the system tightens its grip. But here's the good news. God always gives his people a way out. Those who seek him, those who operate in divine wisdom, they will not be caught off guard. That's why understanding Daniel's prophecy isn't just interesting, it's survival. So let me ask you, do you see the signs of this prophecy happening now? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because next, we're unlocking one of the most critical end-time mysteries, one that will determine where you stand in the final crisis. You don't want to miss this, the seal of God and the mark of the beast in Daniel. There will come a time when every person on earth will have to make a choice so massive, so life-altering, that it will define their eternity. And here's what most people don't realize. Daniel's book has already revealed what's coming. In Revelation 13, we see a terrifying prophecy. A system will rise that forces people to take a mark. Without it, they won't be able to buy or sell. This is the infamous mark of the beast. But here's the chilling part. Daniel's visions lay the foundation for this prophecy, the battle between true worship and false worship, between standing for God and bowing to a corrupt system. Daniel saw it first. Let's go back to Daniel 3's, the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What happened? A world leader set up an image. A command was given: bow down or face death. Those who refused were thrown into fire. Do you see the pattern? Revelation tells us that in the final days, history will repeat itself. A system will rise, an image will be exalted, the world will be forced to worship in a way that dishonors God. And those who refuse, they will be persecuted. Now, let's talk about the seal of God. Because while the world is being pressured to accept the mark of the beast, God will be sealing his people. In Daniel 6, when Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, a seal was placed on the stone that covered the den. That seal represented authority. It showed who was in charge. In the same way, in the final crisis, people will be sealed, either by God's authority or by the world system. And here's where it gets real. How will this battle play out? Most people assume it will be obvious, a clear, dramatic choice, but the truth? It's already happening. Every decision you make, what you believe, how you live, who you obey, is shaping which side you're aligning with. No one will wake up one day and suddenly take the mark of the beast. It will be a slow process of conditioning, preparing people to comply. And let's talk about the financial connection. Do you really think the mark of the beast is just a tattoo or a barcode? Think bigger. Daniel's prophecies reveal that in the last days, financial control will be a major weapon. A system will emerge where those who don't comply will be cut off from the economy. No buying, no selling, no access. If you are 100% dependent on the world's financial system, what will you do when the time comes? This is why biblical wisdom on finances, investments, and passive income is crucial. If you can't survive without the system, you are vulnerable to it. But those who seek God's wisdom, build multiple streams of income, and walk in financial independence will be harder to control. So here's my challenge to you. Are you preparing now? Because this battle isn't in the distant future, it has already begun. The world is shifting, the stage is being set, and when the final choice comes, there will be no middle ground. If you're seeing the signs of this prophecy, drop a comment below. Because next we're going even deeper. We're talking about the final decision, where every person will have to choose their allegiance. This is the climax of Daniel's book, and you don't want to miss it. The final decision. Which side will you choose? There comes a moment when neutrality is no longer an option. A moment when every person, rich or poor, powerful or unknown, believer or skeptic, will be forced to make a choice. Not just a small decision, but the final decision. And Daniel's book reveals exactly how this will unfold. Throughout his visions, Daniel saw a pattern. Every empire, every kingdom, every world system eventually collapses. Babylon fell, Persia fell, Greece fell, Rome fell, and now we are watching the final system take shape. The world is heading toward a climax, and the choice will be clear. But here's where it gets terrifying. Most people won't realize they're choosing. They'll just go along with the system, accept what seems logical, and conform without questioning. Just like in Babylon, the majority bowed to the statue because it was the easy thing to do. Only 3 stood. In the last days, history will repeat itself. A remnant will stand while the world bows. Now, let's make this personal. What about you? What are you building your life on? Because let me tell you something. If your faith is weak now, it will not survive what's coming. If you're compromising in the small things, you will compromise when the real test comes. And if your security is in the world system, your job, your bank account, your reputation, what will happen when it demands your allegiance? And let's talk about one of the biggest deceptions in the final days: financial control. The mark of the beast isn't just a religious issue, it's an economic one. No one will be able to buy or sell unless they conform. Revelation 13:17. That means the final battle isn't just about belief, it's about who controls the money. And if you are 100% tied to the system, you will have no choice when it turns against you. But here's the good news: God always provides a way out. Daniel wasn't just a survivor. He thrived in Babylon because he lived by divine wisdom. He had influence, he had resources, he was prepared. And that's why seeking God's wisdom in finances, investments, and entrepreneurship isn't just about success. It's about survival. When the world system collapses, those who walk in divine strategy will be the ones standing. And now, the final question: where do you stand? Are you preparing? Are you strengthening your faith? Are you positioning yourself for what's coming? Because let me tell you, this isn't a game. The clock is ticking. The final kingdom is rising. And when the choice is put before you, there will be no middle ground. So I'll leave you with this. Will you stand with God when the world bows? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because Daniel's book wasn't just a prophecy, it was a warning. And those who ignore it won't be ready. Everything we've just uncovered isn't speculation, it's prophecy. It's happening. Right now, the world is shifting toward the very moment Daniel foresaw, and the final decision will be placed in front of everyone, including you. You now have knowledge that most people don't. You see the signs, the patterns, the deception unfolding. But here's the real question: what will you do with it? Because knowing the truth isn't enough. You have to act. If you don't prepare spiritually, mentally, and financially, you won't stand when the test comes. Daniel didn't just survive in Babylon, he thrived because he understood the times. He built a life that wasn't dependent on the system. He had divine wisdom, financial strategy, and unshakable faith. Do you? The clock is ticking, the final events are accelerating, and the choice will be in front of you sooner than you think. The question is, will you stand or will you bow? If this message spoke to you, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to be truly prepared for what's coming next, you need to see the next video on your screen. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss what I'm about to reveal next.